Elara Voss stood at the helm of the flagship, the wind tugging at her dark braid as her eyes scanned the horizon with practiced intensity. Despite the lingering chill in the air, beads of sweat traced cold paths down her temple. The silence was brittle, the calm before a storm that felt inevitable. "Captain," sensors picking up movement ahead, Lena Oris's voice crackled softly through the comms, breaking the tense quiet. Elara's gaze sharpened. Details. Multiple fast-moving vessels, flying low beneath the clouds, bearing the insignia of Kale's fleet. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. The name Riven Kale was a shadow looming over every decision she'd made since accepting this expedition. His reach extended like tendrils through the floating continent, a dark promise of chaos. And now, his presence was no longer a distant threat. It was here, looming on the wind. "All hands battle stations," Elara ordered, her voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. Jarek prepared to engage. Jarek Thorn emerged from the shadows of the deckhouse, his sun-bleached hair tousled by the wind, the scar over his left eye betraying a lifetime of violence and survival. He grinned, a flash of reckless confidence in the storm clouds. "Finally, some action," he said, his voice rough but alive with excitement. "Let's show them why they don't mess with us." Elara shot him a glance, half amusement, half warning. "Keep your head. This isn't a game." The fleet shifted formation, the air thick with the scent of oil and ozone as engines hummed and cannons groaned to life. From the murky veil of clouds, the blackened ships of Kale's lieutenant emerged, their jagged sails and sharp hulls cutting through the sky like predatory birds. The pirate ships bore the cruel tattoos of lawlessness, dark leather armor, grim faces marked by scars and tattoos that told stories of battles hard fought and loyalties earned and broken. The first cannonball screamed through the air, shattering the fragile moment and sending a spray of splintered wood and sparks into the wind. The flagship shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring as crews scrambled to contain damage. "Return fire," Jarek shouted, gripping the controls with white-knuckled intensity. His ship danced through the sky, weaving between enemy fire with an agility born of years navigating the most treacherous currents. Elara's heart pounded as she coordinated the defense, issuing orders to the gunners and engineers. Myra Solon was below deck, her slender hands flying over the controls of an ancient defensive mechanism salvaged from a lost sky. The contraption hummed and sparked, casting eerie glows against the bulkheads as it fired energy bursts that cut through the smoky air. Come on, Myra muttered, teeth clenched, as the ship rocked violently. The sounds of battle were a cacophony, crashing wood, shouted commands, the sharp crack of gunfire mingling with the howling wind. On the deck, Tauren Vex moved like a shadow of death. His broad shoulders absorbed the brunt of the skirmish as he led the defense against boarding parties. Steel clashed under the storm-darkened sky, the sharp ring of blades echoing across the decks. His piercing blue eyes burned with fierce determination, every movement a promise to protect his crew at any cost. Elara's gaze met Yarek's through the comms, a silent exchange that spoke volumes. Their partnership was a fragile thread woven from necessity and old grudges. Yet in this moment, amid the chaos and fire, they moved as one, a dance of survival and trust born from shared peril. The skirmish stretched on, each side probing for weaknesses, testing resolve. Finally, with a roar of engines and a coordinated barrage, the pirates were forced to retreat, their ships melting back into the mist from which they had emerged. The fleet was battered but intact. The crew exhaled collectively, the tension momentarily easing as the threat passed. Yet beneath the relief lay the unspoken truth. This was but a prelude to the storm that awaited. Elara stood at the railing, the wind whipping at her coat, her thoughts heavy. The encounter had exposed the brutal realities of the political and martial landscape they star. World where alliances could shatter in an instant and danger lurked behind every cloud. Yarick approached, his grin faded to something more sober. "They're coming, Elara. Kale's not just hunting he's hunting us." She nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun struggled to break through the gathering clouds. "Then we'll be ready. But this time, we fight not just for survival, but for the future of Skyfold itself." As the fleet regrouped and tended to their wounds, the crew felt the weight of their mission settle deeper into their bones. The skirmish had drawn back the veil on the dangers ahead and forged a reluctant unity among them. Yet questions lingered in the charged air. Could Elara and Yarick's uneasy alliance hold against the rising tide? Would the crew withstand the betrayals and battles yet to come? Above, the skies of Skyfold churned. Restless and wild, an unforgiving frontier where shadows of pirates and politics wove a dangerous tapestry. And in the heart of it all, Elara steeled herself for the storm looming just beyond the horizon. The story of the Skyfold campaign was far from over. In the shadows of the clouds, the true battle for the skies was only beginning. Myra Solon stood at the bow, her slender fingers brushing over the shifting mist as if reading a hidden script written in the air itself. The faintest glow pulsed beneath the cloud's surface, a subtle luminescence that only she seemed to notice. Her breath came in shallow gasps of excitement and caution. "Elara," she called softly, her voice barely carrying over the hiss of the wind, "you need to see this." Elara Voss approached with deliberate steps, her practical braid swinging against the worn leather of her jacket. Her sharp eyes, weathered from years of navigating unforgiving skies, scanned the cloudscape with a mixture of skepticism and hope. "What is it, Myra?" she asked, steadying herself against the railing. Myra's gaze was fixed on the ethereal patterns glowing and twisting beneath the swirling mists. "Ancient technology," she whispered. "Not just relics, but active mechanisms buried within these lost skylands." Elara frowned. "How can you be sure? The energy signatures match what I've studied from the old archives." Myra replied, pulling from her satchel a worn codex filled with faded diagrams and notes. "This isn't just static, it's power waiting to be harnessed." The revelation hung heavy in the damp air. For years, the expedition had chased rumors of lost territories, fragments of Skyfold's forgotten history. Now, the truth shimmered just beneath their fingertips, but with it came the weight of danger and uncertainty. Below deck, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Elara had sensed it creeping in for days, whispers behind closed doors, furtive glances exchanged in shadowed corners. The crew, a blend of explorers, sky pirates, and scholars, was a volatile mix of ambition and desperation. Jarak Thorne leaned against a wooden beam in the common room, his sun-bleached hair tousled and eyes sharp beneath a furrowed brow. His usual confident grin was tempered by an edge of caution. "You think this discovery changes the game?" he asked Mira when she joined them. "It could tip the balance of power," Mira replied, voice low. "But it also makes us targets." Yarick chuckled, masking his unease with bravado. "Targets we've been dodging since the day we set sail." Elara entered the room, the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders like a mantle. "We need to be careful. This technology could be the key to our mission, but also a wedge driving us apart." Tauren Vex stood nearby, his broad frame casting a protective shadow. His piercing blue eyes scanned the crew, always alert, always ready. "I'll tighten security. No one gets close without my say." Elara nodded in silent gratitude. Trust was fragile, and threats could come from without or within. Already, Lena Oris had intercepted troubling signals hinting at rival factions moving against them. That night, Elara retreated to her quarters, the familiar weight of old maps and star charts surrounding her. She traced the routes they had flown, the treacherous currents that challenged them at every turn. Her mind churned with doubt and determination. Could she hold her crew together? Could she trust Yarek, whose past was as shadowed as the skies they traversed? And what of the betrayals she had sensed simmering beneath their surface? Morning brought a harsh wind and a grey sky thick with low clouds. Mira called Elara to the observation deck, where the faint glow beneath the mist pulsed stronger. "It's reacting to our presence," Mira said, her voice a mix of wonder and warning. "We're close." As the airship edged forward, the mists parted like curtains, unveiling an ancient skyland. Its jagged spires rising from the clouds, crowned with relics of forgotten technology, humming with latent energy. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying, but the crew's awe was short-lived. Rumors of dissent turned to open suspicion. Elara caught a whispered conversation between Lena and a shadowy figure in the corridor. Yarek grew restless, his usual charm giving way to terse commands and veiled threats. Ilara's heart pounded with the weight of command. To succeed, she needed to bind her crew with trust, yet the very discovery that could save them now threatened to tear them apart. "We stand on the edge of history," she told them all in the dim light of the ship's hold. "But we must stand together, or we'll fall divided." A silence followed, heavy with unspoken fears and fragile hopes. The wind outside howled like a living thing, carrying secrets on its breath. In the shadows, alliances shifted, and Elara knew the coming days would test every bond, every resolve. The secrets in the wind were no longer whispers, they were a storm gathering strength, ready to break. And as the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, Eliara's gaze lifted to the stars she once trusted so completely. Now they seemed distant, uncertain, but she would navigate the darkness no matter the cost. The chapter closes on Elara's steady breath mingling with the restless wind, a promise and a warning intertwined in the drifting clouds. The expedition's future and her own redemption hung in the balance, poised on the secrets hidden just beyond the veil of mist. Elara Voss stood motionless, her sharp eyes scanning the decoded messages flickering across the translucent screen before her. Lena Oris, fingers flying over her console, worked tirelessly to intercept and decrypt signals that had been troubling the crew for days. The atmosphere was thick with an unspoken anxiety. Something was wrong, and Elara could feel it gnawing at the edges of the mission she had fought so hard to lead. "Here," Lena whispered, voice barely carrying over the steady drone of the engines. Another transmission, encrypted with a frequency used by Kale's fleet. "Someone on board is sending information." Elara's jaw clenched. Her gaze shifted to the gathered crew, their faces lit by the cold glow of the screens. Among them, Yarek Thorne's rugged features were taut with barely suppressed anger. His sun-bleached hair was tousled from hours spent pacing, and the scar over his left eye seemed to deepen in the dim light. "That traitor," Yarek growled. "We need to find out who's betraying us now." The room stilled as the weight of his words sank in. Elara knew the stakes. A single leak could unravel everything. The mission to reclaim the lost Skylands was fragile enough without the added threat of internal sabotage. She took a breath, steadying herself. "We can't afford to fracture the crew, but we must act fast." "Lena, trace the source." "Torin, secure the cargo hold and double the patrols." Mira, prepare the equipment for possible emergency maneuvers. Tauren Vex, broad-shouldered and scarred, nodded grimly. His piercing blue eyes swept the room, silently communicating his readiness to defend the crew at any cost. Minutes dragged as Lena's fingers danced across the console. Then, a faint signal pulsed, a hidden transmitter, cleverly concealed within one of the cargo containers. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Jarek's voice was low and dangerous as he addressed the gathered crew. The traitor is among us. No one leaves this ship until we find them. Elara exchanged a look with Jarek. Their alliance was uneasy, forged from necessity rather than trust, but now it was the only thing standing between the expedition and disaster. They split into pairs, scouring the airship with a keen eye for anything out of place. Ilara's mind raced, questioning every interaction, every glance exchanged. She caught herself watching Kes Marlowe nervously adjusting a stack of charts, then shaking off the doubt. The apprentice navigator had shown nothing but eagerness and loyalty. In the shadowed corridors, Jarek confronted a crew member rumored to have been acting suspiciously. The tension crackled in the air. The distant roar of shifting winds outside the hull mixing with the sharp edge of Jarek's voice. "Why are you sending messages to Kale's fleet?" Jarek demanded, his tone a mixture of fury and disbelief. The man's eyes darted, sweat beading his forehead. I had no choice. They threatened my family. I never wanted to betray the mission." Jarek's expression hardened, but softened just enough to acknowledge the fear underlying the confession. The betrayal was real, but the reasons behind it were tangled and human. Meanwhile, Mira and Tauren worked in tandem to secure vital equipment in the cargo hold. The clank of tools and hurried footsteps punctuated the urgency as they reinforced locks and prepared for any attempt of sabotage. Back on the observation deck, Elara and Jarek stood side by side, staring out into the swirling clouds that cloaked the floating continent. The skylands lay just beyond reach, but the storm within their ranks was proving just as perilous as the shifting air currents. "We can't let this break us," Elara said quietly, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Jarek nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "For now, we survive, together." The chapter closed on their solemn vow, the air thick with the tension of battles yet to come, both against the external dangers of Skyfold and the internal fractures threatening to tear the expedition apart. As the airship pressed onward into the unknown, every creak and whisper aboard carried the weight of trust betrayed, and the desperate hope for redemption that hung in the balance. The crew had been chasing elusive readings for days, whispers of a lost skyland, hidden from all maps, a remnant of ages long past. Now, as the swirling fog began to part, a colossal silhouette emerged, crowned with the faint glow of ancient ruins that pulsed with a soft ethereal blue light. "There it is," Myra Solon murmured at Elara's side, her voice a mixture of reverence and barely contained excitement. The slender scholar's silver hair caught the dying light, her pale fingers clutching a worn leather notebook filled with sketches and notes on Skyfold's lost technologies. The legends were true. Elara's breath caught. The skyland floated serenely, a vast expanse of crumbled towers and broken walkways suspended by mechanisms that hummed faintly beneath moss and vines. It was a ghost from a forgotten era, a place where the laws of the skies themselves had once been rewritten. "Prepare for descent," Elara ordered, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "We don't know what's waiting for us down there." As the fleet of airships descended through the mist, the hum of ancient machinery grew louder, vibrating through the hulls and into the very bones of the crew. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and unease. Yarek Thorn paced on deck, his sun-bleached hair whipping in the cold wind. Eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon for any sign of rivals. "This place reeks of trouble," he muttered, fingers tightening around the hilt of his cutlass. "It's not just trouble," Elara replied, her gaze locked on the glowing structures below. "It's opportunity and danger." Once landed on a crumbling platform, the crew disembarked cautiously. Mira immediately set to work examining the ruins, her hands moving deftly over faded glyphs and rusted mechanisms. "This technology, it's unlike anything we've seen. It's the key to controlling the skies, not just surviving them," she explained, eyes shining with the thrill of discovery. Elara watched Mira's careful study, aware that each revelation shifted the mission's stakes. What had begun as a quest to reclaim lost skylands was fast becoming a race for a power that could redefine the entire continent's future. Meanwhile, tensions simmered among the crew. Yarek's mistrust of the expeditions, scholars clashed with Elara's steadfast belief in collaboration. Their voices rose in heated debate beneath the shadow of the ancient spires. "We can't afford divisions," Elara insisted. "If we fracture now, the Sky Pirates and rival factions will tear us apart." Garrick's scowl deepened, but he nodded grudgingly. "Fine, but if your scholars bring us ruin, I'm not going down without a fight." The uneasy truce was shattered by the crackle of intercepted communications. Lena Orus's voice came sharp and urgent over the comms. "Enemies approaching fast. Mercenaries and Sky Pirate factions are converging on our position." Tauren Vex, broad-shouldered and battle-hardened, marshaled the security teams. His piercing blue eyes scanned the dense fog that crept along the perimeter of the Skyland. "Stay sharp," he commanded, his voice low and steady. "We're not alone down here." As the crew fortified their position, Elara felt the weight of leadership press down with crushing clarity. Each moment here could tip the fragile balance between survival and annihilation. The ancient power beneath their feet held promise, but it also invited chaos. She turned to Myra, whose fingers traced a glowing circuit embedded in the stone floor. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Myra's gaze was distant, haunted. A technology that could control the very air currents themselves. If it falls into the wrong hands, Elara's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't." The lost Skyland secrets whispered through the ruins like a siren song promising salvation, threatening destruction. And as rival factions closed in, the expedition stood on the precipice of a new era. One where trust would be tested, alliances forged in fire, and every decision could mean the difference between redemption and ruin. Night fell, casting long shadows across the ancient stones. Elara stood watch, the stars above a silent witness to the unfolding storm. Somewhere in the darkness, the echoes of the lost Skyland called out, and she knew this was only the beginning. "Tomorrow," she whispered to the wind, "we fight for more than land. We fight for the future of Skyfold." The crew returned to their ships, the air thick with tension and unspoken fears. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the lost Skyland pulsed once more, its ancient heart awakening to the touch of the present. The battle for control and for survival was about to begin. On the deck of the flagship, the air was thick with anticipation and unspoken tension. Tauren Vex stood rigid, his broad frame a bulwark against the rising storm. His piercing blue eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and alert, as the salty breeze tugged at his worn coat. Around him, the crew moved with a nervous energy, each aware that the dangers they faced were no longer confined to the unpredictable skies, but crept closer to their fragile sanctuary. Tauren's hands tightened around the grip of his weapon. the familiar weight grounding him as a sudden whistle split the air. Bullets sang past, tearing through the crisp atmosphere like angry hornets. Without hesitation, Torin dove behind the railing, muscles coiling as he returned fire. The acrid smell of gunpowder mingled with the briny sea air, while the distant roar of an approaching storm underscored the chaos unfolding on deck. "They're here," a voice hissed nearby. Torin's gaze snapped to the saucer lookout, signaling the presence of bounty hunters. Shadowy figures known for hunting rogue crews across Skyfold. The threat was real and immediate. As the skirmish erupted, the pounding of boots and clashing of metal echoed through the ship's timbers. Torin moved with lethal precision, each strike and parry a testament to his mercenary past. Yet beneath his fierce exterior, a storm of conflicting emotions roiled. Protecting this crew was more than duty. It was redemption for the ghosts that haunted him. Below deck, the atmosphere was equally charged, but in a different way. In the cramped common room, Elara Voss and Yarrick Thorn faced off in a battle of wills. The flickering lantern cast long shadows on their faces, highlighting the tension etched deep into their features. "We can't afford to split the fleet," Elara said sharply, her voice steady but edged with frustration. "Every move we make is watched, every hesitation exploited." Yarrick's sun-bleached hair fell in disarray as he leaned forward, his scarred eye narrowing. "And your caution is going to get us all killed. We need to strike first, hit Kale's allies before they gather strength." The room hummed with the energy of their dispute, a microcosm of the wider fissures threatening the expedition. Around them, crew members exchanged worried glances, caught in the crossfire of leadership and uncertainty. Meanwhile, in the quiet sanctuary of her workshop, Mira Solon was absorbed in her work. Kneeling over a delicate mechanical device, her pale fingers traced ancient symbols with reverence. The soft click of gears and the faint hum of power filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil outside. Her discoveries held promise, a beacon of hope amid growing fears. Yet the weight of secrets pressed heavily upon her. The knowledge that unveiling Skyfold's ancient technologies could shift the balance of power irrevocably. The distant rumble of thunder mirrored the brewing storm within the crew, a reminder that knowledge was as dangerous as any enemy. The night deepened, and with it, the dangers multiplied. On the lower decks, a whispered warning alerted Torin to a new threat. Moving swiftly, he intercepted a shadowy figure attempting to harm a vulnerable crewmate. The corridor erupted into a clash of metal and whispered threats, each strike a desperate bid to protect the fragile bonds holding the team together. Torin's past, marked by violence and survival, came rushing back with every blow. The scars he bore were not just skin deep, but etched into his very soul. Yet in this moment, his loyalty shone brightest, a fierce light against the encroaching darkness. As dawn approached, the fleet lay battered but unbroken. The attack had shaken them, exposing vulnerabilities that could not be ignored. Elara, standing on the bridge, scanned the horizon with renewed resolve. The fissures within the fleet were real and dangerous, but so too was their determination. "We hold together," she vowed quietly, more to herself than anyone else, "or we fall apart."